Hello, hey, good evening, guys. Thanks a lot for joining us for the webinar today. We really appreciate you guys taking out the time and joining us to learn more about VPC peering across AWS regions. So let me start off by first making introductions. My name is Hasham, and I'm part of the sales team here at Datapath.io. We are also joined by Tatiana, who is from our marketing team. And then last but not least, we've got our CEO and CTO, Sebastian Spies. He is the guy who actually came up with the Interregion Connect solution. He's the brains behind the machine, as they say. And today he's going to give you a detailed description of why and how he came up with the Interregion Connect solutions, what were the reasons that led him to this solution, and what benefits it can provide for users on Amazon Web Services. So as you can see on your screen right now, the Interregion Connect solution allows you to create secure, reliable, and optimized VPC peering connections across AWS regions with reserved bandwidth. What the different aspects of the IRC that we like to point out are essentially security, reliability in terms of performance, and of course reliability then leads to optimized performance in terms of latency and packet loss between for the communication between VPCs across different AWS regions. As you guys probably already know, AWS does have an in-house solution for VPC peering inside an AWS region. So if you've got multiple VPCs inside an AWS region, AWS has a solution for that, and you can easily go ahead and peer those VPCs. The gap that Datapath.io tried to fill with the Interregion Connect solution was for VPCs that are distributed across different AWS regions. So AWS does not have an in-house solution for that right now, and so that's where the Interregion Connect solution of Datapath.io comes in. So if you've got deployments or workloads that are distributed across different AWS regions, and those deployments are talking to each other, what the Interregion Connect solution essentially does is it allows you to connect those deployments or optimized and sort of secure and reliable routes. So let me quickly jump to the next slide. I'm just going to give you a brief quick overview of what the different aspects of the Interregion Connect solutions are, and then Sebastian is going to go ahead and give you some more technical details. So as I mentioned, the four kind of attributes of the Interregion Connect solution, or the four use cases, as you might say, that we see for the IRC are security, reliability, optimized performance, and reserved bandwidth. So how the IRC essentially works is it restricts traffic exchange between AWS regions to a specific network. And what this allows us to do is it helps us avoid traffic bottlenecks and congested internet highways. I mean, we see this with Amazon Web Services quite a lot. There is an element where performance suffers because it is kind of unreliable and we don't really know what is happening in the background. So there are latency spikes and packet loss spikes. So by restricting traffic exchange to a single provider, we avoid traffic bottlenecks and we avoid kind of the congested internet highways, which lead to performance problems. Next on the list is the ability to reserve bandwidth. The ability to reserve bandwidth essentially avoids issues around over-provisioning and packet loss. So if there's a lot of communication happening between VPCs across region, you can go ahead and reserve bandwidth for that link, so that you don't run into issues with packet loss and losing some of your some of your data. Another aspect is end-to-end encryption and security, where we deploy, we allow you to deploy an IPsec security tunnel with one click on top of the IRC. And as I mentioned before, we have multiple redundancies, and we have baked in failover into the IRC solution. The reason for this was because when we were starting with the Inter-Region Connect, we were talking to a lot of people, a lot of potential customers, and a recurring point there was, what are you guys doing to ensure failover and to ensure high availability? So the thought process behind kind of introducing multiple redundancies was to kind of address those concerns. So we have multiple redundancies both on the Amazon Web Services level, and then we also got redundancies on the network level, which I'm sure Sebastian is going to tell you a little more in a little while. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of automated, and we do automated disaster recovery for instances if they go down, or if there are any problems on the network level. We can seamlessly kind of reroute traffic to the default Amazon Web Services routes, so that there is no kind of disruption in the service, and the IRC can go on functioning over time. So let me now bring in Sebastian for the kind of technical overview of the IRC. Sebastian, can you take it over from here?
Hello. Yes. So thank you very much, Hasham, for the introduction. Let me quickly also define and explain to you what we're going to do and how we plan the rest of this webinar. So we have planned to have to take 45 minutes of your time, and we are continuing with this presentation for roughly 30 more minutes, and we also want to give you a sneak introduction into the console that we are running. And that means we're showing you how our system works and to show you how the integration works. At the same time, we also want to give you the chance to ask some questions. So if you take a look at your GoToWebinar, you can see that there's the possibility to ask questions. So we want to take some time in the end, like 15 minutes, to answer your questions as good as possible. So please feel free to post your questions, and we will do our best the last 15 minutes to address those questions. Yeah, so let me jump to the next slides. So we've seen that the Amazon Web Services, especially the Amazon Web Services, have some part of their network between their regions being managed by themselves. For example, this is true for the United States. However, when we take a look at the network of the regions that are not in the United States, we see that they are just connected to the public internet over providers that are just regionally available. So for example, if there is their region in Singapore, they use internet traffic locally in Singapore, and that also means when the carriers have a good density in that area, connection locally will be very good, but there is no way to address the challenge of going between those networks, and potentially whenever traffic is going from one provider to another one between those regions, there is a chance that performance goes bad. So this all affects these properties that we have here, for example, latency, bandwidth, reliability, security, and of course you can see the more players you have in the game, you have more players that potentially can take a look at your data. Also, if you have a solution that connects you between different areas. For example, with level 3, you have a single integration and that locks you in. So for example, in the future, if you do not want to use level 3 between those locations anymore, then you have a problem because you have to write a new integration. And typical use cases that we see are APIs that are talking to central databases, because you cannot, on very many use cases, cannot work with having distributed databases right away and global distributed databases from the beginning. So there is always some case of or some use case that requires to have a good connection between those regions. So it's not always going from region to client, but in between them. So we have started by integrating the AWS into AWS Direct Connect, and we have deployed our own hardwares and our own hardwares. Those are routers that we put into the data centers, the co-location of Direct Connect. So wherever you have an AWS region, you will also find a Direct Connect location, and those are most of the time public facilities where you can put and co-locate your own hardware and where you can take your traffic. So, and locally we also buy traffic from the local transit providers and from the network providers. But what we do is we restrict the traffic from both sides to those networks, and you will see on one of the next slides how we do that. Our wall system is built on top of the Border Gateway Protocol and the OpenFlow protocol. So the technology that we're using allows us to be very flexible in terms of the routing that we're doing. So different deployment scenarios are possible, but I will also come to that a little bit later. So what you can see here is you have, for example, 2 VPCs in different areas in different regions of the Amazon Web Services. And what you have is on both sides your application running, and this application can talk via the internet gateway that you see here on the bottom. Let me just bring this here. What that you can see here on the bottom can access the public internet. However, in order to talk to this other VPC, we do not want to go over the public internet gateway. Instead, we want to have a better connection, and this is what we do using the AWS Direct Connect. So here we have an alternative route going to this other VPC, which points towards this Direct Connect. And on the other side of this Direct Connect, there is our Datapath.io router. And you have that on both sides of your application. So in each of your VPCs, you will find the same setup, and each of them is pointing to the other side. What we do in our routers is we call ourselves network agnostic. That means whatever network we can get and that we are able to reserve bandwidth within, we're using in order, and that we find on both sides, we're using to send traffic between each other. Each of those networks, they have different SLAs, different performance, and we make all of this transparent to you. So when you go into the process of ordering this IRC, you will right away get some performance data plus a quote that shows you and gives a direct comparison between those different networks. So in these examples here, we have a different networks like a Cogent, Hibernia, so they have been taken over by GTT, and level 3. So what you can see is we have a link. For example, if you choose level 3, then we would restrict from both sides the connection over the network of level 3, and you will perceive only the network of level 3 to connect both of your VPCs. So we have implemented, because you see those networks that we're using, they have different properties, especially when it comes to reliability. The SLAs that the networks are giving might differ, and this is very often a function of the price. So we wanted from the beginning, and on the software side, take out this topic of scheduled maintenance or network outages, because whenever you have, I mean, the networks, they can give their SLAs, but in the very moment they are down or there is some scheduled maintenance, you have no alternative, and you effectively have a downtime. So what we do is we have implemented into the solution the high availability feature, that whenever the IRC goes down, is able to still keep the connection between both VPCs up by going over the public internet. So what you would see here is you have your tunnel between both VPCs routed over the internet gateway, and this happens within very short failover time. So we have configured it to be a 300 milliseconds, so when we don't see when we cannot see the other sides respond within 300 milliseconds, we're able to fail over the public internet and the internet gateway. Let me show you how we implemented that. So on both sides of the IRC, we have two instances. Each of them are deployed in different availability zones. So you can see here on the left side, there is one instance in availability zone 1 and another standby instance which is running in another availability zone. So an availability zone with the Amazon Web Services is one failure domain that that can fail at once, and we want to make sure that whenever this happens, we have an alternative. So also when, for example, host systems fail of those instances, and anything happens to those instances, they're having, say, a self-healing and also fail over between them. So whenever, for example, the active instance goes down, there will still be the standby instance that is taking care of routing the traffic between both sides. Then we have also implemented the tunnel over the IRC. That is the one that you can see down there. So this is the IRC link. So we have both sides meshed with each other, and this is the IRC link. Even when we go over this network that we are restricted traffic over with the IRC, we are still using IPsec to encrypt the traffic. So when we send traffic over this network, the network provider will only see encrypted IPsec traffic. So let's assume this network fails. We still have those internet gateways, and those internet gateways, so the session is also set up over those internet gateways, but it's not preferred. It just acts like a failover, as like a standby, and traffic goes over the internet gateway the very moment this IRC fails. At the same time, like I said before, we have these active instances. If they go down, there's a failover over the other instance. So let's say this is your server instance that is talking to this other server instance, and this active instance is going down. This instance is taking care that the traffic coming from this server is routed over the standby instance. Yeah, like I said, we have an end-to-end encryption through IPsec, and we have all of this completely automated using CloudFormation to make sure that this is something that does not give you too much integration and overhead for integrating it, and this all is running on open source software, which is in this case a Strong's one. when we take a look at the competitive advantage and why you should be using a product like ours, we see ourselves as network and provider agnostic because we do not have our own network and we do not provide a network and connect the regions to each other. Instead, we're just seeing ourselves as a gateway towards those networks. And by doing this, we have, and by being technically able to change the network provider, we avoid the vendor lock-in. So if you have a solution that works with one provider, we're very easily able to switch the network, and this was within a very short time frame after we have provisioned enough bandwidth for you. We give you the performance and the price transparency. So even the very moment you will order the IRC, you have the transparency and you can compare prices and the performance. And also the examples that we show to you right now are based on AWS, but we have multiple connectivity providers that also extend our solution to other cloud providers. So in the next step, I would like to show you and give you a sneak preview on our solution. Yeah, so when you go to our website, this is not what you can see already. We're launching what you see today. We're launching in the next months, and this I will give you a glimpse into what is possible. So we already have created a new account and created account details, and we also provided payment methods. So the next thing that we're going to do is connect to AWS, and this again, let me show you, works fully automatic by using CloudFormation. So the first thing that is, we need to create a user within your account, and we need to make sure that we can talk to your account using the API. And this is very easy. So we create a token that is being used to identify you. And when you have been working with AWS before, you will know that creating IAM users, creating credentials, and handing over access keys and secret keys is a lot of fiddling, and it's very error prone, and Amazon does not really have a good way to do this. So we've given our best to actually make this process as smooth as possible, and I'm pretty sure with the automation that we have done here, we're pretty much bleeding edge and able to automate this and reduce the error rate as much as possible. So let's click on this one, and what we now have done is we have now got a link towards the AWS CloudFormation stack, and already we have here this JSON file. So we can click on next, and as I've shown you before, we had this token parameter. So we automatically copied this token parameter into your clipboard, and we just need to paste it here, and again we can click next. On this page we can also click next, and now we also need to acknowledge that we're going to create IAM resources. Then we click on create. Hold on, I need to change the name because we already have done this. I call this demo. Now if I click on create, you can see that this CloudFormation stack is now creating. And now that we have started this, we can see that there are the different IAM and Amazon objects which are created, and this takes a couple of minutes. So in that very moment, we can already go back to our first tab, to the Datapath wizard. And what you can see here is that we already have started creating the stack. And the stack is while it's running, always reporting back to us what has happened. So you can see here our WebSocket is giving back the current state. So the next thing that should happen is that the IAM user is being created. Then the Datapath policy will be created and attached to this user, and then the credentials are actually being sent back to our API. So all of this happens in a very short time frame. You see we're almost done. So we have 3 check marks. And once we have the 4th check mark, we're actually able to continue. So you can see we're done here. So let's click on Start Wizard. And yeah, so that's from this side. We're now able to create the IRC. So when we click on Create IRC, we're able to see which VPCs are available in the different regions. So for example, we have here one in EU Central 1, and we have another one in US East 1. You can now select some bandwidth that you want to use in order to connect. You have, for example, here 1 gigabits. You can add IPsec, so you can, encryption is something that happens that you can choose, enable or disable, so you can opt out of encryption if you don't want it, and you can opt out of failsafe. What you have right away is the chance to get your quote right away. So if we click here, then we would have this stack automatically up and running. Okay, so let me quickly open the numbers of questions. I think until now nobody has asked a question yet. I would like to take the chance to encourage you to ask a question under questions. So if you open this question slide, you are able to directly ask us questions, and we give our best to answer this for you. And while I ask you to do this, let me bring Hasham back to the game. So, Hasham, you're back.
Yep, yep, I'm back.
I don't know if you collected questions before this webinar that we can answer at this point.
Not really. I think we do not have any pre-questions from the webinar right now, but let me quickly check. Okay.
So, yeah, Tatiana already posted one of the questions that we get asked very often. Can you connect only AWS regions or other cloud providers too? So we're starting with AWS regions because we're seeing that AWS is the biggest provider, and we are seeing the biggest market with AWS. However, the biggest challenge are Azure. We are right now able to connect. Also, we can mix and match different cloud providers to each other. So it's actually possible that we integrate into Azure and have an AWS region connected to an Azure region. This also not works locally, but we can also do this in multiple Azure regions. Hasham, do you have some FAQs and frequent questions that you always or that you very often get?
Yeah, I mean, so sometimes we have this concern with customers needing to know whether they have to go in and get their own direct connects, or do they leverage the direct connects from us that we already have. So I guess that is one concern.
Sorry, Hasham, I don't know if there was something with your voice.
Okay, can you hear
So I
me now?
couldn't hear you. Can you repeat that, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I mean, so there is kind of one concern with direct connect. So do the customers have to go in and get their own direct connects, or are they going to leverage the direct connects from Datapath.io? So I guess that is one question that we. Yeah.
Thank you, Hasham. Yeah, this is a very important question because the Direct Connect has multiple billing parts, and all those contribute to the total amount that you're paying. So there's always the port fee that ranges depending on the price between a couple $100 to a couple $100 to $1,500, and we're paying these port fees. So whenever you order an IRC, we're provisioning out of those ports and provision actually VLAN on those ports. So the people that are using the IRC share this direct connect, and we're then running these ports and pay those. Another part to the billing is the per gigabyte fee over Direct Connect. So usually those range between 2 and 3 euros for every gigabyte that is being sent out, and this is going directly to AWS. So when you probably send this over the public internet, this is roughly the same price. I don't know how much this is actually right now, but over Direct Connect, it's more or less the same as if you would send it over the public internet. So on the Amazon side, they will not change much. Okay. Now we have a couple more questions. Who is going to manage the Datapath console? Oh yeah, this is very important. This is something that we want to give into your hands. So we want this integration to be fully flexible, and when we launch our new console, this will then be completely at your hands. You will be able to run, administer, and configure your IRCs fully over the console and also over our API. So everything that you can do inside of our API, you can also run you can also over our console, you can also run over the API.
Mm-hmm. So I have. Do you have other questions?
Yes, there are three more questions.
Yeah. Oh, okay, please go ahead.
Please go. Okay.
So I had one question which I kind of run into, which would be, can we create connections from one VPC to multiple VPCs? So that is another kind of question that we do have.
Yeah, so we actually support a star topology. This is not something that currently works over the console that we're launching, but of course, when you have a global deployment, we are actually able to provision star topologies and have the routing working in the star topology. So, for example, if you have 3 VPCs that you want to connect to each other, you would select one of those VPCs to be the hub, and all the other VPCs would create an IRC towards that hub, and all the traffic is routed over this hub. There's another question regarding load balancers. How do you deal with load balancers within a VPC? So the load balancers within a VPC are are a feature that run inside of a VPC and have a private IP address. So whenever you are install a load balancer, you will have also a DNS name that creates multiple ENIs, network interfaces, and each of them is having an own IP address. And you will find those private IP addresses or public IP addresses behind those DNS names. So if you create a public load balancer, you will find the public IP addresses behind this load balancers. And if you query this DNS name from within your VPC, you will get a private IP addresses. And when you are running over the VPC inside of Amazon, you will also be able to receive those private IP addresses, and those private IP addresses can be used to actually talk to the other side of the VPC. So an IRC will always give you the possibility to talk to the other side using private IP addresses. So whenever you have a load balancer that will give you private IP addresses, you are actually able to reach the load balancer on the other side. What is the minimum contract term for IRC? So for the launch, we're offering this on a monthly base. So whenever you order an IRC, you will be able to run this on with a minimum contract term of 1 month. And during that period, you will get our supports, and we will keep track of how happy you are with that connection, and also we will ask you how well and how satisfied you are with the underlying connection, and if you are if you want to try, for example, another provider, or if you want to take a look at the availability, at the SLA, at the pricing, and so on. Yeah, so of course there is the possibility to go for longer contract terms. However, we have not published this, and we're making this possible depending on the underlying network. So for example, if there is a network that gives us a more price-effective connection between multiple sites, so for example, providers like Megaports are able to provision connections for a longer time than just 1 month for being more price effective, then we also want to pass this along to our customers, and we're then actually able to pass this on and give this on. Is the customer on the Datapath.io team? I think this question means which other customers is it the customer on the Datapath.io team? I think this question means how are there other customers that are running this solution? Yes, we have. Even before we launched this new console with the Interregion Connect, we have got some customers that are running on top of this. So one notable example is the smartphone bank N26. So they're running their credit card processings over such an IRC, and yeah. So that is to the questions. What is the failover plan for an outage? What is the ETA? Thank you for this question. So the failover plan for the outage. Let me quickly go back to this. So the failover plan actually adds those instances to the setup. So we create those 4 instances at the very moment the customer wants to have failover as part of the IRC. So when failover is added, there are those 4 instances. If you, for example, do not want to have any failover but want to have only security, of course we only needed 2 instances, and then we encrypt just over this IRC connection. And the if you neither want a failover or security, of course you do not need to run any of those instances. So the failover plan here is added and also fully managed based on the cloud formation that we are running inside of this account. Is the support available in this service? Yes. So we give a standard support that is at business hours, and we're able to help as much as possible the very time you have a question. So we also have an extended support period for things like outages and scheduled maintenance, and we're able to reply within a short time based on our SLAs. What you could see in our plan is I think there was a price of 666. This is just it's not a real it's not the real price that you will see in the end. It's just for this demo purposes here, and it's also dependent on the underlying provider. So right now we just the sneak that I've been giving to you is did not give you a look into how we select the different providers, and this I think it was even $666 per month is just for the purpose of showing you that you will get the quote right away before you order. So in that case, it's a monthly plan. That means it runs for 1 month, and you can decide if you want to continue having it for second month and so on. So it just renews after the first month on a monthly base. But it's a monthly price that you will get the quote for. Okay, Hasham, do you have other frequent topics that we're being asked?
Yeah, so I guess another question would be what kind of instances are being provisioned, and do those instances depend on the traffic or on the bandwidth?
Yes, this is actually the case. So, for example, if you have instances that are running, so all these instances with Amazon, they have a different bandwidth allowance. So you can have different instances for different bandwidth. So, for example, if you are running below 400 megabits, this is very well being handled by the M4 instances. So the medium instances of Amazon of the 4th generation, or if you go above, then there are instances that handle up to 20 gigabits per second. I think those are the C4. I think those are called C4 instances.
And does the the bandwidth level also ties into the pricing for the IRC itself, right? So and also the AWS regions that you're using.
Yeah. So the pricing is dependent on the regions, and it's depending on the quote from the underlying network. For example, if there are different locations around the world that have different prices. So, for example, markets like Asia or in Australia, they have a higher price. And this contributes towards the quote. But besides that, we do not charge more for the instances because Amazon already has a variable charging for the different instance sizes, and we're not participating in that. We're just charging for the management of those instances. Because for us, it's no difference. It's just another string.
Yep.
Okay, I think we can wrap it up at this point. I think if there are no last-minute questions, I would like to address my thanks to you, and it was a pleasure talking to you. Also, we recorded this this webinar, so we're happy if you want to download this and take a look at this later. I think we can also upload the presentation towards this, so you can download it afterwards to take a look at this. And we'd be happy to keep you on file, and we will keep you informed. Of our launch. All right. Okay, I think there is one last-minute question. Is there any demo provision so that we can use and test? Yes. So, Hasham, I think you can go into contact with Bikram to set up a test. So he can then test this solution, and yeah, so we usually enable the people to test the system and do this with a restricted bandwidth for 2 weeks. And yeah, so we are happy to help you all set this up. And yeah, I think we should let you go. And thank you again very much for joining us. And we also would appreciate if you like to give us your feedback, and also for our future webinars, if you would join us again. Yep. So thank you very much again. Hasham, thank you too for joining, and thank you everybody, and hope to see you soon.
Sure. Thanks a lot.